In 2025, IRCC Express Entry Comprehensive Ranking System, or CRS scores, are at record highs, leaving many applicants, especially those without skilled trades, healthcare backgrounds, or high French proficiency, feeling like they don't stand a chance. Whether you're inside or outside Canada, optimizing your profile seems overwhelming. Most people assume that they're out of options, but that's far from the truth. By combining targeted optimizations and leveraging overlooked strategies, I guarantee that you can significantly increase your chances of receiving an invitation, even in today's ultra-competitive system. By the end of this video, you will know about every possible trick and hack to improve your chances to get an express entry invitation. Hi, my name is Simarjot, and I have been providing immigration services for Canada since the last 5 years and for New Zealand since 2016. My team has handled more than 1,100 applications, including 386 permanent residency applications, 510 temporary residency applications, and 225 LMI applications, and our clients have only good things to say about us. Before we get started, please subscribe to my channel and join our newsletter through the link given in the description to keep on getting the latest and in-depth knowledge about the inner workings of the immigration industry. Now, let's take a deep dive into the Express Entry Comprehensive Ranking System. It's a common system that manages Canadian Experience Class, Federal Skilled Worker, Federal Skilled Trades, Provincial Nomination Program, and category-based applications. The Comprehensive Ranking System awards a maximum of 1,200 points. The breakdown of these points is categorized in 3 factors. There's a maximum of 500 points for core human capital factors. The core human capital factors include age, level of education, language proficiency, and Canadian work experience. Then you get a maximum of 100 points for skill transferability factors. These skill transferability factors include various combinations of education, language, Canadian and foreign work experience, and certificate of qualification. And lastly, you get a maximum of 600 points for additional factors. The additional factors are awarded for provincial nomination certificate, arranged employment, then Canadian education, if you have a Canadian sibling, French language proficiency. Before we start, you need to know the CRS calculator has a different set of rules to calculate points if you are single and if you have an accompanying spouse. If the spouse does not have a high level of education, proficiency in English or French, and Canadian work experience, the spouse's profile is likely to drag the principal applicant's score down. If the spouse has a very weak profile, it can drag your score down as much as 40 points. So play around and see if you need to include your spouse in the application or not, as you have the option to not include your spouse now, but through a spousal sponsorship PR application later. Let's walk through the IRCC CRS calculator using a fictional profile to understand this better. So to get onto the Express Entry calculator, I simply Google CRS calculator, and this link from the Government of Canada website shows us the CRS calculator. The very first thing you will notice here is they ask you about your marital status. So as we have discussed previously, if you are not married, you simply select you're single or not married. And if you are married or in a common law relationship, depending on how strong or weak the profile is for your spouse, you may choose to include them or show them as non-accompanying spouse. And you do that by saying that you are married. For example, they are not a permanent resident of Canada or a citizen, and they will not be accompanying you. And by doing this, if they have a weak profile, you can not include them in the application, but you can sponsor them later through a spousal sponsorship application. It's a PR application. There's a long waiting time, but that's the price you have to pay. So think accordingly, or work with your spouse if they can also improve their profile to help you. So in our example, let's say our applicant is single, and next we move on to the next question, which is about the age. We can either simply select the age if they're already qualifying, or if you're not qualifying right now, then you can plan for it. Let's say you know that you will qualify in a year's time or in 2 years' time, so you put your age what it will be in that time in the future, and that can give you a more conservative and more realistic assessment of your CRS score. In our example, let's say the client or the applicant qualifies at 20 years of age. The two important things to note here. One is that once you turn 30, every subsequent year after that, starting from 30, you will experience a decrease in points because Canada wants people who are younger. That's how the system is designed. So if you are planning to get your permanent residency through the express entry system, it's better to start younger, earlier in life. And another point to be noted, and it's an important one, and this is something I just recently experienced with one of my applications, is I have this client who got the invitation when she was 29, and she had her birthday soon after that. But if you know that once you get the invitation to apply for permanent residency, you are given 60 days to submit the PR application. She happened to turn 30 years of age at that point, within that time. And because she was arranging her documents, we could not rush her application in. But then we were not worried because your age gets locked the moment you receive the invitation to apply. The lock status does not show up on the system though, because the system will show you a lower score. But the only way to get around that is by requesting an exemption, and there's a public policy that allows you to do that. And we do mention about that public policy in our submissions when we are representing our clients. So that's an important thing to note here. Okay, next we have the level of education. So here they talk about your overall education and if you have any Canadian education, as you can see in these two questions here. So with the options here, it starts from the secondary diploma, then a 1-year program or a 2-year program, or a bachelor's degree, which is at least 3 years, or an advanced diploma, which is 3 years. And then this one is interesting, which is you have 2 qualifications. One of them is at least 3 years, and the second one could be a postgraduate certificate or a diploma. What they have not mentioned here is that for you to claim points for this category, the 3-year program has to be done first, and the 1 or 2 year certificate or diploma programs have to be done after that 3-year program. It cannot be vice versa for you to claim points for this category. Next, we've got the master's program, and then we've got the highest points for the doctoral level university degree. A few more points to note. If your highest qualification is Canadian qualification, then you don't need to get your overseas qualifications assessed. That assessment is required if you want to claim points. I'll give you a couple of scenarios here. Let's say your highest qualification here is master's, and your overseas qualification is also master's, or it's bachelor's. Then there's no point of getting your overseas qualifications assessed because you already have a Canadian qualification, and Canadian qualifications don't need to get assessed. However, if you've done a postgraduate certificate inside Canada, after doing your advanced diploma or bachelor's program overseas, then definitely you have to get your overseas qualification assessed to claim points for this category. All right. Next, we have the points for Canadian degree, diploma, certificate. So they give you these three options. That is secondary school, 1 or 2 year diploma or certificate, degree, diploma or certificate of 3 years or longer, or a master's, professional or doctoral degree of at least 1 year, one academic year. Most of the international students who come to Canada, they do these 1 to 2 year diploma programs. And the thing with that is that you get 15 additional points. But if you're one of those students who's already inside and you see the current CRS scores very competitive, see if you can increase your points by studying 1 year extra and make it an advanced diploma, or transition to a bachelor's, or try enrolling in a master's program if that case applies to you, because that will give you 15 more points. So basically you could be getting up to 30 additional points versus someone who is overseas. So plan. All right, so in our example, we have chosen this as let's say our applicant has master's program, and that's what they did inside Canada. Next, we have the official languages, which are 2, English and French. These are the only 2 officially recognized languages. Like above, unlike above, the scores need to be valid for the last 2 years, and these points don't get locked. So you remember the concept we were discussing about age lock-in? You don't get this option for your language scores, and neither do you get this option for your education assessment. So if you have an overseas assessment from one of these agencies, it's valid for 5 years. Your language scores are valid for 2 years, and they don't get locked like the age. So you have to be mindful of that. What that means is, if let's say because of your education or because of your language score, you were having certain number of points at the time of invitation, and if either your IELTS or your education credential assessment is expiring, then you better be planning it up front and get the assessment done again, or take your language test done again, and aim, and especially for the language scores, aim to retain the same score or score higher. Because if you don't do it, then, or if your score comes lower, then you could become ineligible for the PR. Why? Because let's say, for example, the threshold for the draw was 463, and you had a score of 463 or 465, but now because your English language score results are a little bit lower, you are not getting 463, but you're getting, for example, 460. You are now not eligible for permanent residency. You don't meet the minimum requirements. So you have to plan strategically and always keep a look on the validity of your documents. All right. So next we have to, in our example, let's say, yes, we have the test results less than 2 years old, and let's say English is our first language. The kind of exams or the types of exams they recognize for the English are CELPIP, IELTS, PTE Core, and for French it's TEF Canada and TCF Canada. Now, how does it translate? So each language test has its own scoring framework.
but the common framework for that applies equally to all the language tests is the CLB or the NCLC for French, CLB for English. The most easiest one to get hold of is CELPIP, because let's say if we're talking about CLB 9, it translates to 9 each in your all these modules. But if you're aiming for CLB 9 in IELTS, you will have to have 8 in listening, 7 in speaking, 7 in reading, and 7 in writing. So, and these are the two ones I remember because these are the most common ones. And okay, why am I talking CLB 9? It's one such score where you get the maximum boost or you experience an exponential gain in your CRS score. So if you're aiming for it, try for CLB 9 score. And can it be even better than that? Is there a situation where we can make it even better? Yes. If you can manage the same score in French, that is CLB 9 in French, or at least a CLB 7, because what that will do is having just CLB 7 in French will also make you eligible under the French category draws, which are very popular at the moment, and that is one of the programs they're targeting in the year 2025. So if you can manage good French language scores, do it. And another thing to note is that if English is your first official language and French is the second official language, and to qualify for points for the second official language, you still require to have CLB 5 or NCLC 5. But if you reverse this, what I mean is if you get, so let's say this is French here, and we get CLB 7 or higher. Does not matter, CLB 8, 9. But yeah, at least CLB 7. And you can play around with this yourself. And you get at least CLB 5 in English. And yeah, here we go. So that's gonna give you a lot of bonus points, and I've made notes on how this comprehensive ranking system works for when you have the French language. So I will speak it out directly from the notes that I've made. If you get CLB 9, then you get up to 50 points each for the skill transferability factor combinations of having good language proficiency with post-secondary education and the other combination of good language proficiency with foreign work experience. If you get CLB 7 proficiency in French, as I was saying, you can get additional 25 points and also become an applicant into the French category draws. But if you also get CLB 5 in English, you can get 25 points more for a total of 50 CRS points just because you know French. Lastly, as I've said, and I'll repeat again because it's so important, I think. Lastly, if you get at least CLB 5 in French, this can also help you get a work permit without the LMIA, and you can get another 50 or 200 points for job offer depending on the position through the Francophone Mobility Worker Program. And my last point with regards to IELTS and eligibility, or the language scores with eligibility of the program, is that there are certain points that you are supposed to get in your language scores to meet the bare minimum requirements. What are these? So for Canadian experience class, if you have a tier 2 or 3 occupation, you are supposed to get a minimum of CLB 5. And if you are a Canadian experience class candidate but have work experience under tier 0 or tier 1 knock codes or occupations, then you're supposed to get a minimum score of CLB 7. But here's another interesting fact. Let's say you've got mixed experience. You've got experience in both tier 0s and 1s and also in 2s and 3s. Then how do you determine what is the minimum CLB score you need to get in your language scores? The answer depends on how much work experience you have in those kinds of occupations. So if you have more experience in tier 2 and 3 occupations, CLB 5 is going to work for you. But if you have tier 0 and 1, like more of tier 0 and 1 occupations, your work experience in those occupations, you are supposed to get CLB 7. That's the minimum eligibility criteria. Same goes for federal skilled worker. The minimum eligibility is CLB 7. So keep a note of that. These scores of CLB 7 are not that high. That's the minimum eligibility. It's really a competitive system out there. So the more score you get and think beyond the minimum eligibility criteria, the better for you and the better for you to get an invitation under the express entry system. All right, so yeah, we've chosen our example scores. Let's see if we can improve. So that should be CLB. Let's say if it was IELTS, then the third item should be our CLB 7 or the fourth item. So with that approach, let's say for TEF Canada, the fourth item would be equivalent to CLB 7. Yep, and for the second official language, we have 5 each in our example. And we move on to the next point of work experience. All right, so what kind of work experience? So as we know, express entry only recognizes full-time paid work experience, and that experience has to be in high-skilled occupations in tiers 0, 1, 2, and 3. So the first question is, in the last 10 years, how many years of skilled work experience you have in Canada? And these are the options. You get to see 1 years or 2 years or 3 years or 4 or 5. So let's say we select 1, which is the bare, like this is good enough, because even with 1, you will see a huge gain in your points. Next, we have the foreign work experience. So the options here are 1 year, 2 years, 3 years or more. The maximum you can claim for is 3 years or more. So let's say we've selected 1 year here too. Before we move on to the next point, there's a lot more to delve right here. Number 1, if you've never claimed any foreign work experience previously, let's say you came here as a student and then you applied for your postgraduate work permit, but in those applications you've never claimed any foreign work experience, you don't have any, don't let other people or other bad advices spoil your case, because you could be held liable for misrepresentation. Why I'm telling you this? Because you have to play very wisely, because there is still a chance for you to claim foreign work experience, but that is possible only when you are working in Canada. If you've never worked before, let me repeat that. If you've never worked before and you're currently working on an open work permit, for example, it could be a spousal open work permit or postgraduate work permit, you can still claim foreign work experience. Minimum requirement is 1 year, but it has to be reasonable. You can work for a position such as an administrative assistant or a bookkeeper and be able to show that it was possible for you to work remotely. right? But don't be stupid enough to claim points for, let's say, a dentist position as remote work. How can you operate on your patients? At least not in today's day and age, maybe 50 years from now when we have computers, but that's another chapter to discuss at another later time. So be mindful. So if you have already declared that experience in the past, you have work experience, you've mentioned that in your previous applications, good, great. If you don't have that and you have 1 to 2 years of your work permit left in the country, you can think of increasing your points through this avenue. This is something that has been recently made clear by IRCC. All right. Another thing to note is you cannot claim points inside Canada for the period you were studying, because points cannot be claimed when you are a student, period. And I have a couple of pointers here which I wanted to discuss here and bring it to your knowledge on how the comprehensive ranking system works. So you can get up to 50 points each for the skill transferability factor combinations of having years of Canadian work experience with post-secondary education and years of Canadian work experience with years of foreign work experience in tier 0, 1, 2, or 3 occupations. Points can be claimed for work done in any high-skilled occupation in the last 10 years, but cannot be considered if it is gained as a student or as self-employed. And lastly, anything over 30 hours per week is not considered. So, for example, you are on an open work permit. You are doing 2 jobs because you can. You're working, both are high skill. You're working 30 hours in first job, 30 hours in second job. So you can't go to IRCC and say, hey, give me 2 years worth of points because I've done so many hours just in 1 year. That is not going to happen because IRCC is not going to allow you to claim. You can claim, but it's not going to award you for concurrent work experiences inside Canada. However, this is a bit different from the case we were just discussing above. That is, if you are working for a Canadian employer, you can concurrently work for a foreign employer and are still eligible to claim points because the CRS system is designed like that. All right. So that's something very important for you to consider. Just like the points I mentioned for the Canadian work experience, this is how the CRS system is designed, so you might want to take notes of this. You can claim up to 50 points each for the skill transferability factor combinations of having years of foreign work experience with good language proficiency and years of Canadian work experience with years of foreign work experience, like Canadian work experience and foreign work experience in tier 0, 1, 2, or 3 occupations. So next we have points for certificate of qualification from a Canadian province, territory, or federal body. The options here are whether you have it or you don't. But okay, before we get into that, let's discuss what is a certificate of qualification. So this is basically for people who are from the trades. In Canada, there are a lot of provincial organizations such as provincial colleges of trade, and then there are some federal bodies who award you certificates of qualifications, and usually the process is that you have to take a certifying exam or a qualifying exam. Only after that you get the certificate of qualification. Each province or authority has its own standards for that particular trade, so check which province you are targeting, where you want to target, and accordingly you may be, if you have the experience, you have the number of required hours, you may be eligible for the certificate of qualification. So do check that, or if you're already inside Canada, think of taking this test, because you can get up to 50 additional points, and I'll give you the breakdown in a second. But yeah, that's another great venue for you to increase your points. The exact breakdown, and I've made notes for this, is that you can get up to 50 points for skill transferability factor, combination of possessing a valid certificate of qualification and good language proficiency. Usually, as I said, you get this certificate once you pass a certifying trade exam. Another good thing with the certificate of qualification is that you don't need to be currently working in that skill trade. Just by possessing the certificate of qualification, you can claim up to 50 points. And that's a good venue for you to consider if you are in the trades. All right. And next, we have points for a valid job offer. Again, it can be with an LMIA or LMI exempt job offer. And you can get up to, so if your occupation is tier 1, 2, or 3, you can get 50 points. And if your occupation is NOC 00, that is the C-level position, such as CFO, CEO, CEOs, the presidents, vice presidents, what do you have, whatever it is, you can get those points. Like you could get up to 200 points for these C-level positions. But there's a catch. With the current political situation, there is a possibility, and they've already made the announcement, and that is why I'm very conservative with my clients, that I don't raise their hopes too much. And this is something you also need to know, that the government plans on removing these additional points for the job offer. They've not made it really clear whether they are only going to target the LMIA job offers because of the inherent fraud in the system. And I'm not sure if they're going to remove only 50 points, or even they're going to target the 200-pointer job offers, or that they're even going to target the LMI exempt job offers, such as the Francophone Mobility Worker Program, or other ICT program based job offers. There's so many LMI exempt job offer types. I could do another video on that later, but there's no clarity, and we don't know what will happen, because the elections will happen soon, and we don't know if they will be able to make a final decision before the elections or not. So that's up in the air. So for the sake of this example profile, I am not going to include these points for the job offer. And next we move on to the nomination certificate. So thing is that this is tied to the provincial nomination programs. The thing to note is, and I get this from people a lot of the times and they're very easily confused. So provinces have their own quotas to issue nominations for permanent residency applications. The provinces have programs which are sometimes linked with the express entry program, and sometimes they are not linked with the express entry programs, and they have their own separate scoring scale and system and requirements. The ones that are linked to the express entry system, once you have completed the nomination process with the province, they issue you a nomination certificate, and if that program is linked to the express entry program, you get an additional boost of 600 points in your express entry profile, which is huge, considering that we have draws. The general draws are happening at the moment in the 500 to 550 CRS range. So just having 600 points from the provincial nomination certificate is huge. So that's even though it's a different topic, but if you think you are going to get those 600 points, or you will be able to manage those 600 points, that's a great option. And lastly, the CRS system also, the comprehensive ranking system also awards you points for if you have a sibling, whether it's your step sibling or sibling, and they're 18 years of age and they are a Canadian permanent resident or they're a citizen, you can claim additional 15 points for that. So there is this is the complete breakdown of the points with some additional background information, some tricks and hacks on how you can improve your scores.
Before we look at the total CRS points of our fictional profile, if you have any questions about your specific profile and wish to take professional help, feel free to book an appointment at the link given in the description.
Now let's take a look at the CRS calculation that we did, and considering the options we have chosen, what score have we got? So for age, we got, so these are, first of all, these are the core and human capital factors we were discussing. And these are the skill transferability factors for which you can get a maximum of 100 points. For the core human capital factors, you get a maximum of 500 points for a single applicant. So for age, we've got 110 points. For level of education, we selected masters. We've got 135. For the official languages, so this is the first official language and the second official language, we selected CLB 7 for French and CLB 5 for our English. So we have a subtotal score of 357 out of the 500. There's no spouse. Skill transferability factors. So for education, considering the options we've chosen above, we've been able to score 50 for education, and for foreign work experience, we've been able to get another 50 points for that over here. And sorry, over here, this is 26. But we've also got points for certificate of qualification. So if you see, the total here is 50 plus 26 plus 50, that makes it 126. But since there's an upper limit of 100 points, the maximum we could get here was 100 points. And lastly, the additional points. We don't have a provincial nomination, so we don't have those 600 points. We don't have LMI job offer. However, we studied masters in Canada. And we have a sibling, but let's say, just to make it more realistic, we don't have the sibling. And by the way, you can, so it doesn't have to be only your sibling. It can also be the sibling of your accompanying spouse. So that's another point to remember. So yeah, going back, let's calculate the score again. So we don't have a sibling, and we've got the maximum points we could get for French at CLB 7. So, and also we've done English as with CLB 5. So the maximum points here are 80. So you can see we've got a score of 537. And this is very realistic. I have seen dozens and I don't know how many posts from so many personalities and figures on social media who are saying that it's not possible. Everyone who's having a score of more than 500 points, it's all because they've bought those LMIAs. And that's not the case. I've just shown you how it's possible. I'm not saying it's easy. Not everything in life is easy. But you can still get a score, a very respectable score of 537 without being in skilled trades. And imagine if this person was in skilled trades. Imagine if this person could get CLB 9 in their first official language. Their scores would be something else. They would even be touching close to 600 points. It is possible. If you are determined, you can beat the competition. I've just shown you how it's possible without fraud, without anything else. If you are determined, if you have the time, if you strategically do the things necessary, you can get the points.
Let's summarize the key takeaways. First, think whether the spouse's profile will help you or not, and accordingly, include them or not. If you are currently studying at a diploma level in Canada, can you convert your Canadian education to at least a 3-year post-secondary program? Or if you are planning to come to Canada, think of enrolling in at least a 3-year post-secondary advanced diploma or bachelor's or master's or a postdoctoral program. Try to learn French and aim for at least CLB 5, if not CLB 7, and also aim at CLB 7 in English. This can help you with work permit extension if required through Francophone Mobility Worker Program, and also help additional job offer points without needing LMIA. Don't waste your time in Canada. Try to get any skilled work experience as soon as possible so that you have maximum chance of accumulating at least 2 years work experience as soon as possible before your status expires. Try to gain at least 1 year of foreign work experience concurrently with your Canadian work experience if you do not have any foreign work experience to claim more points. I hope this information was useful to you. Please let me know in the comments section. If you want me to share in-depth knowledge about other application types, please let me know that too. Thank you.